Everybody have your mic on? Good evening. I want to welcome everyone here with us tonight. I want to thank you for coming out as we do the business of the county. I'll call our Monday, October 4th, 2021 meeting to order. At this time, I will lead us in the invocation. Our dear Lord and gracious Heavenly Father, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to come here tonight, Lord, to do the business of the county. We pray that you be with each one of us as we make these hard decisions, Lord, that you give us the wisdom and the guidance to do so, Lord. We thank you for all the many blessings you've given us here in Pickens County, Lord, and we pray that you continue to bless us. We pray that you be with our military, our first responders, and our essential workers and others, so Lord, as we deal with the current situation that we're in. God, we want to thank you for all that you have done and all that you're going to do. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. At this time, I'd like to recognize Brian Ray Castle to lead us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Castle, if you would. Brian Castle enlisted in the United States Navy in Charlotte, North Carolina, and completed his basic training at Naval Recruit Depot at San Diego. Brian attended Field Medical Service School and completed Marine Corps reconnaissance training and became Dental Technician Petty Officer First Class. Petty Officer Castle served with 2nd Marine Division Force Reconnaissance while deployed in Operation Desert Shield, Desert Storm, where he was involved in many combat encounters to include the ground offensive and the liberation of Kuwait. Petty Officer 2nd Class Castle received the Navy Commendation Medal, Meritus Unit Commendation, Southwest Asia Medal, Overseas Service Ribbon, Navy Achievement Medal with 1 gold star, Kuwait Liberation Medal, Sea Service Deployment Ribbon, Navy Unit Commendation. Veteran Brian Ray Castle served his country honorably, and today we show him our appreciation. Thank you for your service. Thank you. We'll now hold our public forum. This is a time for the public to give us feedback on issues you deem important. The time limit is 30 minutes, and each speaker gets 3 minutes. There is a timer. Please be respectful so that other folks can take a turn as well. Madam Clerk.
I call Melanie McLean.
Maggie broke her foot, so she wasn't able to be here. Sorry about that. Good evening, Chairman Bowers and serving council. As you know, I have been attending our council meetings since June. In that time, I have observed you all tackle important wide-ranging topics from infrastructure, recycling, EMS, animal control. I want you to know that I'm thankful for all that you do, and I am more understanding and appreciative of our local delegation than ever before. In June, I came to you with a concern regarding activities at 1781 6 Mile Highway. Directly following that meeting, immediate action was taken and 10 code violations were cited between June 14th and July 12th. My question is simple. Why no further citations? Have the violations been corrected? I can confirm that they have not. In fact, there are more structures that have been erected since that time. Today, I read the mission of the Code Enforcement Office. That mission is to work in partnership with Pickens County residents to promote and maintain a safe and desirable living, working environment. The primary goal of code enforcement is to ensure the health and safety of all Pickens County residents through systematic yet sensitive enforcement of Pickens County ordinances. I understand systematic yet sensitive. However, sensitive to who? We know this has impacted my family, other residents in the proximity, and Daniel High School for over 3 years now. It now comes at our expense, the community's expense and livelihood. The systematic and sensitive approach isn't working. I read the purpose of code enforcement is to investigate complaints regarding various codes of the county, including the development standards, ordinances, junkyards, weeds, abandoned vehicles, trash, debris, and substandard housing. Does the investigation stop? When does it end? Should it continue until resolved? I do understand and trust that you are working to address the concern and other activities may be occurring. Please don't stop what you're doing. My request is that you use all the resources within your span of control. My simple question remains, why no further citations? Have the violations been corrected? And what good are the ordinances if they are not enforced? Thank you for your time and thank you for your service to our community.
Thank you.
John L. Raines.
First of all, Chairman Bowers, please waive the public forum time limit and allow all the people who want to speak the opportunity to do so. You have the power to call for the vote on that extension now. To not do so says you don't care what all these people who came out in the rain had to say. Second of all, Henry, Trey, Inslee, Roy, Chris, you all should be ashamed of not being transparent about this overtaxation shyster scheme to skirt the South Carolina law. All 5 of you claim to be Republican patriots. Well, I'm not seeing it. It is absolute tyranny to wait until the 3rd and final reading to rubber stamp a proposal before we, the people, even knew about it or had a chance to speak about it, much like how you did the alcohol sales and flying off to Germany on our dime. Shame on you. Y'all keep saying you're tired of kicking the can down the road. Well, I, for one, would like to kick the 5 of you down the road for overtaxing us without consulting us first. But since we don't have recall in South Carolina, I can't kick you down the road. Yet. Third of all, I propose the 5 of you who so easily passed this overtaxation scheme and forced us all to pay more to lead by example and put your money where your mouth is and voluntarily sign the form I handed you and write a check tonight, since you think more money is the solution to all our county woes. Will you write out a check tonight? Will any of you who are for more taxes write a check? I've got the form right here. I thought not. Progressives just like forcing everyone else to be taxed to death to further their idea of utopia, which leads to their socialism. Have any of you here tonight seen any proof that paying more taxes ever really fixes anything and makes your life better? When will enough taxes be enough? Government just wants slaves. I say, let's fire the 5 that voted yes for overtaxation and start pushing Senator Rex Rice to get a South Carolina law that allows recall so we can get rid of shysters like these. Who's with me?
Thank you, Ms. Raines. Ladies and gentlemen, we're trying to have a meeting, please.
Good evening. My name is Ann Corbin, and along with my husband, Steve, we are the owner-operators of Cafe Connections, which is a nonprofit. We are located on Main Street here in Pickens, and we have been in operation now for 10 years. Tonight, I want to address the unfair, unjust, and illegal tax hike that all of you, with the exception of Mr. Seda, just recently passed. So I'm going to tell you how this is going to affect our nonprofit and then us personally. As a nonprofit, we rely totally on God and the generosity of others for our funding. We take no money from the government, nor will we ever, not even the COVID funds that were offered. Quite frankly, we don't want the government telling us what we can and cannot do with regards to us sharing the gospel. Since January, we have seen our donation income take a nosedive. People that could afford to give at one time have had to cut back. It's not their fault. We have all seen groceries, medicine, gas, utilities, city services, etc. go through the roof. We have had to cut out things like trash pickup, our post office box, security system, and now we find ourselves not being able to go and get supplies unless absolutely necessary. We're all having to cut things out of our budgets, including helping ministries like ours. Let me rephrase that. We, the people, are having to cut back. Apparently, our local and national officials don't think that they have to cut back on anything. Both you and them continue to take our money and do less and less. You keep telling us it's, quote, for the roads. You and others have told us this for decades, yet it never seems to make it to the roads. Maybe some patchwork here and there, and then you can claim it went to the roads. As a ministry, did you realize that we feed approximately 75 people a week a hot meal now? Other days we hand out sack lunches. In case you didn't know, all of our services to the community are at no charge. It may not cost our community a dime to come in and enjoy our services like food, snacks, Wi-Fi, printing services. However, it does cost the ministry. It takes roughly $5,000 a month for us to be able to do what we do. Yes, we get as many supplies donated as we can, yet it is still not enough. Our landlord has already increased our rent once, and we can't survive another increase.
And thank you for what you do, Ms. Corbin. Thank you.
Alan Quinn.
What happened last month when 5 of you voted for a 9.9 mil tax increase is wrong. The state said you could only increase it by 5.3 mils, but county administration said they had found a loophole, so you could raise it as much more than that, and you did. That was during the third and last reading, so everyone was taken by surprise when you passed it. These people here tonight, and myself, and you, everyone in Pickens County has already paid to fix our terrible roads. With the fairly new gas tax, they are still increasing every year. And the balance of the gas tax trust fund is now over $1 billion. $1 billion. And they admit they can't spend it fast enough. That's called double taxation. They already have the mechanism to share this surplus with the counties, but only give 3.5% to the counties combined. 3.5%. This is highway robbery. You can help fix this problem by passing a resolution that puts a ceiling on what the state can hold in the gas tax trust fund. But you, Chairman Bowers, must then sell that resolution to all the other counties for it to be successful. That's your job as chairman. What I will do is try to get a resolution from the Pickens County Republican Party creating a limit on what the state can hold. And all above that would be sent automatically to the counties. Then we can get the state Republican Party to pass it with all 46 counties. Both counties and the SCGOP can pass it on to our legislators at the same time. Now, when I say this, please do not start spreading the word I'm running for District 5 again, because I don't know yet. This is an if statement. If I run against Representative Neil Collins, if I win District 5, the first thing I will do to introduce a bill to do this, and I'm sure any legislator who wants to be reelected in their counties will vote for it. Raising taxes is a liberal, progressive way to solve problems. Just look at what they're trying in Washington, D.C. as we speak. Increasing taxes is not conservative. What is conservative is to use the taxes we have already paid to fix the roads. You must stop this double taxation. But instead, you raise their taxes much more than the state allows, which in my opinion is illegal and will probably fail if it goes to court. Please recall this tax increase. Tax increases impact low-income families the most, and they are already hurting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Quinn.
Gentlemen, last month there was a bit of discussion on masks, and this is going to be about that. And fortunately, it was decided not to pursue any mandate on masks. The one thing that was not mentioned or discussed was the basis, is a mask a valid preventive for any of these COVID things? There are numerous randomized controlled trials, which is a gold standard for establishing the efficacy of a study. And almost all of those point to no benefit of anybody wearing a mask, especially for healthy people, and especially for children, kids. They have a 99.97% survival rate if they come down with COVID. It's criminal to make kids wear a mask. Now, I know that's not anybody here, your issue, but in the future, people have to justify their masks with valid data that's credible, that can be verified to warrant the need to wear a mask. And I don't see that happening. Nobody's asking these questions, and they have to ask those questions. It's very, very important. Now, the second thing is, there's always discussion, a focus on cases, COVID cases. What is a COVID case? A COVID case is based on a PCR test. A PCR test is a polymerized chain reaction test, which was invented by Kary Mullis, that's Kary with a K, in 1986. He won the Nobel Prize for that in 1993. And he stated specifically that the PCR test is not to be used to diagnose disease. But that's what the WHO decided to do in their infinite wisdom, and the rest of the planet took off, and that's what we're stuck with now. Now, remarkably, the CDC decided, I don't know, a month or so ago, that yeah, there's some issues with the PCR test, and they're going to abandon that as of the end of this year. Earlier, WHO also said there are flaws, I believe that's a term they used, with the PCR test. Now, the other thing is the PCR test is prone to manipulation. The cycles threshold, the higher the cycle threshold, the bigger chance of it being a false positive. 97% of the time it can be a false positive. Now, the last thing is the VAERS Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System. As of the 9/24, there have been 15,937 deaths in the US. There have been 752,800 adverse events, 105,758 serious injuries. I think that disputes the statement that these injections are safe and effective.
Thank you, sir.
Danny Parton.
My name's Danny Parton, and I'm the East Pickens Precinct. I want to thank you for your time of serving Pickens County. I was in attendance at the September meeting in which the council had discussed on a mask mandate. I want to thank the 5 of the 6 councilmen, Alex Saeta, Roy Costner, Chris Byers, Henry Wilson, and Trey Whitehurst, for your decision and your discussion and decision not to pursue a mask mandate. And again, I say thank you. Then to Alex Sayeta, a councilman, that was the only councilman that voted against the 9.9 tax hike. And I say thank you. I'm a retired pastor, and I've lived in Pickens County all my life except for a brief 4 years that I pastored in Anderson County. My last church at my retirement was in June 2019, and it was Ariel Baptist Church, Rice Road, Easley. I was their pastor for 18 years, and for 40 years now I've been ministering the gospel of Christ by the grace of God to 3 generations in Pickens County. I'm previously involved in rallying pastors of Pickens County and encouraging them to speak out against the evil, against these lies and deceptions that this world is just throwing at us left and right, that is bombarding us through the media, through their take. And I want you to know it is very socialist in their agenda. And as one lady, Candace Owens, you may agree or not agree with her, but she says, stop calling them liberals, stop calling them Democrats, they're American communists. So I want you to understand tonight, I love my county, I love the United States of America. Pastors to stand up and speak the truth of the gospel to their congregations against these lies and deceptions, and to stand bold and get actively involved, that we hold our elected officials accountable. So, if you're there and you're serving and you're doing right and you're serving with integrity, don't fear us. But we're going to be here to hold you accountable.
Thank you, Mr. Barton.
Paul Forsky. Daryl Gibbs.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak to the council. Thank you, Mr. Bowers. Thank you. There's a couple of things that I want to try to emphasize tonight, and I really have a burden upon my heart about it. One is the promises made to your constituents that now have been broken. Let me give you an example. Me and Mr. Wilson actually ran against each other, and one of the things that you mentioned, Henry, when we were running together, is that there would be transparency on every major decision that was made by this council. Do you remember that? You actually did. And one of the things that really bothers me is that how does the council, this council, propose to get the agreement on this double taxation from their constituents? My understanding is after the first 2 readings, there was no opportunity to do any sort of discussion, referendum, or anything like that on what was going to happen. But the last reading, all of a sudden, there was a great revelation to one of the county men that said, oh, we can go above that. If it stops at 10, can we not go to 20%? I mean, what is the way that we're really looking at taxing the people without actually letting them know what's happening? You've got 24 million that came in through the COVID relief, plus you've got 23 million in escrow that you have not used, and yet you're asking for double taxation on the people that you represent. How dastardly that is. That unnecessary burden comes upon people that have just gone through COVID. That unnecessary burden comes through people that are trying to recover. And how dare you to do something like this to your constituency? It's a deviant scheme, in my opinion, to place a burden of tax on residents here at Pickens County. And I want to serve notice on you, Mr. Les Hendricks, that today I called the Attorney General, and by tomorrow I should know how to proceed in having them investigate what you did, sir. In my opinion, you're actually a conflict of interest. You not only have the rhino down there in Columbia, but you're also now having a say-so over how these men vote, and I'm tired of it. And I'll tell you what.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbs.
You will be hearing
Thank you,
from me.
Mr. Gibbs.
Thank you.
I had a little more to say, but my voice is not holding out today, so I'm gonna make it brief. I was not here last month, but I watched the video online. In fact, I even enhanced the audio so I could hear everything that was said off mic. And I just want to go through a few highlights. The first thing is they asked for public input before anyone knew what the plan really was. There shouldn't be any surprise that there wasn't any. Shortly after that, the county attorney was asked to explain the millage cap and the exception, where he did, but then he mentioned that there was a way around all this, the exception being a reserve fund. Trey was on the fence about it, I could tell, but then they gave the example of the $200,000 house and 3 automobiles, said it would be $1.48 more. It was wrong. That was a figure that they used with the 5.3 mils, and they didn't account for the tax on the automobiles. It was wrong. They fooled you. It's nowhere near what it would really be. After that, he asked about what it would cost businesses, and the answer was it'd be higher. There was no more discussion than that. Alex Seda gave a very good and a very appreciated explanation as to why he wasn't voting for this. You guys shot him down, but I appreciate it. Less than 23 minutes after the idea of going to a 9.9 mil was introduced, the first vote was taken on it with no public input. No further discussion allowed from the public. It really should have happened the second reading before they did this. It was really wrong. As far as I'm concerned, you deceived all of us. Yes. I don't usually get mad, this mad at you guys. I don't talk very much. I'm having trouble right now. But what I can't keep it in. You guys did us wrong. I don't trust in. There's one man up there I trust far enough to throw a house, to be honest with you, and he's sitting right there in the end. The exception was exploited to hit citizens of this county with the largest tax increase ever, nearly double what the state law allows. And it shouldn't have happened.
Wayne Madden.
Honorable Chairman, distinguished members of the County Council, my name's Wayne Madden, 401 Red Hill Road, Pickens. I'm here tonight to ask the council to evaluate 2 issues, namely ordinance number 250 and ordinance number 297. If you're not familiar with them, I asked this nice lady here to pass out the things to you. Ordinance 250 refers to unfit and unkept dwellings, failure to remove trash in conditions that might adversely affect others, which carries a $500 fine. Ordinance 297 refers to junk or abandoned vehicles, which need to be covered with a factory cover, not a cheap blue tarp, and out of view of public roads, which also carries a $500 fine. My purpose tonight is to ask that these 2 ordinances be reviewed and upheld or revoked and removed from the book of codes, since they can't seem to be enforced and they're taking up space in the codes enforcement. It's my understanding that violation tickets have been issued for ordinance number 250, and when the party or parties fail to appear for the court date, the cases were just simply dismissed. These two items hurt other people's property value and entice rats and other vermin. Someone, somewhere is dropping the ball, or either the codes are not worth the paper and ink they're written on and should be removed. I also ask that if you choose to let them remain, that all be treated fairly and not one charged and the other let go. Pickens County likes to be known as the gem of the foothills, and it is a beautiful place to be, but how much prettier would it be if these two ordinances could be enforced? I'm not opposed to stuff. I like stuff. I like junk. But there's a difference between organized and just thrown everywhere. Yeah. So I appreciate your time, all your efforts. Thank you for hearing me out, and thank you for your valuable time.
Thank you, Mr. Madden.
Tommy Pace.
Hello, good evening. My name is Tommy Page. It's about 3 weeks ago. I was a paramedic and a field training officer with Pickens County EMS. I've been made aware by several of my former colleagues that my departure has caused a little bit of pain, a little bit of confusion. For that, I am terribly sorry. I served this county for 10 years. I wholeheartedly hope to retire here. Unfortunately, as just about every employee of this county knows, if you come into this council room as an employee, you won't be an employee here any longer. I felt forced to quit a job I loved to come here tonight to talk to you and to these people. I hope you weigh that statement meticulously. Understand the pain this is causing me. Understand the sacrifice I've made to be here. I tried to write a concise statement to give here tonight, but the more I wrote, the more I found there's just too much to say in 3 minutes. So I've delivered to each of you a copy of that. I've also posted online a copy of that because everyone in this room and everyone in this county deserves to be informed, period. In the little time I've got left, I'm going to try to get the main aspect out. Every person who lives, works, or visits in this county is one unfortunate event away from having their lives in the hands of our providers. The job they do is crucial to the safety and the well-being of the citizens of this county. It's unavoidable that our full-time employees are going to need to take time off, whether it be for illness or injury or burnout. And when this happens, we have to have reliable sources of part-time employees to cover those shifts. This is not a unique problem for us. This is happening all over the country. And as such, it doesn't matter if we were somehow able to get every certified provider in this state on our roster. Everyone needs their services right now. They are a limited and priceless resource. The only way we are going to get them to come fill shifts for us rather than our surrounding services is if we pay them at least what they are making elsewhere per hour, if not more. Open shifts right now are causing trucks to be taken out of service because there's no providers available to man the trucks. My time is up.
Thank you, Mr. Page. That's 30 minutes. Thank you. Item number 3 on tonight's agenda is approval of minutes from the September 13th meeting. Ask for a motion and a second to approve these minutes?
I move they approve that with a minor exception.
All right.
On page 2, looks like the word in number 9, the word is seems to be left out about the middle of the sentence there.
All right.
Right there. She is.
We'll have a motion. Do I have a second for the original motion? I apologize.
Second.
Second, okay. So, clarification, item 9, page 2. Ms. Hallam went in discussion on how she against. You're saying you believe there should be an is between she and against?
Yes.
Okay. Any other discussion? That's a motion. I'll second your motion to amend the minutes. No discussion on that. All those in favor of amending the minutes, please signify by raising your hand. Opposed? None? Okay. Any other discussion on the minutes? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the minutes as amended, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you, gentlemen. Item 4 on tonight's agenda will be the administrator's report. Mr. Roper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of council. Appreciate the opportunity to update you on a few things that are relevant to tonight's meeting and also relevant to the continued operation of the county. First, I think it would be best for me to address a couple of the questions that were asked in the public forum, if you allow me to do so. One of those was a similar question that Mr. Madden and Ms. McLean both had, and there's actually a very simple explanation to that. We have been issuing violations out on 6 Mile Highway behind Daniel High School, and we have issued violations for unkept property, but we haven't in the last few weeks. And the reason that we haven't in the last few weeks is because our code enforcement officer ended his career with Pickens County. He retired. If you'll look on your agenda tonight, there is a resolution appointing certain county employees as county constables. Those individuals are back here, and I would say to you both, and I think Mr. Madden may have already left, but the civics lesson you just provided to these code enforcement officers that are about to be appointed as constables is invaluable, and I want to thank you for that. They get to see a real human face to the job that they're just now beginning, starting tomorrow, really, assuming the county will appoint them. So thank you for that. You should see notice of violations coming out again. The ones that have been issued in the past, Mr. Hendricks will be able to give you more information after the meeting about the status of those violations. But I wanted to say thank you, and for Mr. Madden, I also wanted to thank him as well. That's the answer to the question, and so I appreciate you being patient with us as we get employees in place that can address those code issues. So thank you. The second one was, I did ask during Ms. Corbin's presentation from Cafe Connections, I appreciated what she was saying. I asked Mr. Hendricks, the attorney, to research if there was any provision in state law that would allow to lessen the tax burden on a nonprofit, a faith-based nonprofit. So I hope he'll get in touch with you and research everything that's available to you under the law. I want to make sure, and I know that would be important to counsel for that. And then last but not least, Mr. Pace's heartfelt comments. I can tell you just as in the way of background that he is right. This is not something that's unique to Pickens County, but it is something that is our problem too. We can't just dismiss it and say, well, it's happening everywhere, what do you do? This council has been very good in terms of giving me what I've asked for in terms of pay increases, in terms of flexibility with adding staff. Remember, just last month, we talked about adding staff members to alleviate some of the concerns that Mr. Pace has addressed. And just today, I added 3 on to the payroll that had asked to come on. But that doesn't alleviate the pain and the exhaustion that you heard in Mr. Pace's voice. I'll tell you how I got his letter. I don't normally, in a routine business, get resignation letters. People resign, it goes to their department head, and normally they don't get escalated to me unless there's an issue. But our HR director brought me Mr. Pace's letter, and it impacted me. I could tell the exhaustion in the letter and how much he cared. So I looked at it as an opportunity to try to re-engage with EMS, and I've done some things. Many of you know that I've tried to meet with the EMS during their training. I've explained to them that you all have just begun the ARPA discussions, that supplemental pay for frontline workers has just now been a point of discussion, and that they shouldn't read anything into the time periods that the council is just now engaged in that. I also told them that we were going to try to help where we could. I've offered to do ride-alongs because I want to learn more about what they're going through. And I know Mr. Pace knows that. He references it in his letter. So all I would say is, gentlemen, the message he's delivering is a message that I heard, and that was... No.
Sir, Mr. Page. Thank you, Mr. Page.
But I think you see, and this is an example of stress and exhaustion, and we certainly need to support these first responders, and I'm going to make it my business to do so. Moving on, and I'm sure you'll have questions, but moving on with the rest of our updates today, you'll notice, and I'll just zoom in on this because I know there's already been discussion. Regardless of what you might think about COVID or vaccinations or mask wearing, the trend line here is encouraging, and we need to take good news as good news. Good news is always good. So you'll see that the numbers are starting to drop a little bit, and we're very anxious and hopeful that they'll continue to drop. We're still doing what we can to maintain social distance, to wear masks when it's available for us to do so, to practice good hygiene, and to encourage vaccinations for those that are interested. I will say that there have been 422 deaths in Pickens County due to COVID-19. That's not my determination, that's DHEC, so I'm relying on them there. Moving on to something else, you may have seen some coverage of this in the last couple of weeks. Our Crisis Intercept Mapping Team for service members, veterans, and their families was recognized here last week by State Secretary of the VA, William Grimsley, retired Major General Grimsley. And you can see many members there of county staff, including the person standing behind beside the podium here today. Captain Parsons was there, as well as Jessica Varney with our staff, and Chris Bowers, the chairman of county council. He's there in his work clothes because that's literally what he was working in that day when he came. But also Angie Farmer, several other Pickens County, Bethany Henry, folks that worked hard to try to address the statistic, the sobering statistic, that 22 veterans commit suicide in this country every day. So we're going to try to do something about that in Pickens County, and these people have been in the forefront of trying to figure out what that was. I didn't mention Sherry Harris, our VA officer there. So I wanted to thank them. Public notice, in the interest of transparency, that's been addressed tonight. We want to let everybody know that at the Holly Springs School, the Holly Springs Center at 120 Holly Springs Road, there'll be a public meeting about the Scenic Highway 11 corridor study. What can we do to protect this gym in the upstate? We want all of your public input. That event will be publicized. It's happening here on October 19th from 5 to 7. So as you get off work, if you want to come by, it's a drop-in. You won't have to make a huge time commitment. We would love to have public comment on what we can do to protect Scenic Highway 11. So please know about that. Fixing county roads, you've heard some talk tonight about, during public forum, about the funding mechanism that council has provided. What I have taken to my staff is now we have a huge challenge. We have a huge challenge to try to demonstrate to people that this money is being used in the appropriate fashion. What you see here are some things we're doing on social media right now to try to promote the facts, even getting down to granular details like these are the potholes we've repaired this week. These are the roads we're studying. These are the way traffic counters work. We're trying to do public education as a part of this. Recognizing that not everyone is going to be on social media, we're also going to start a door hanger campaign. One of the frustrations for me, and I'm sure many of you will recognize this frustration, is you see the county or the state come through and they do some work on a road and then they move on. And you ask yourself, was that it? Was that all that's going to happen? So what we're developing is a door hanger that shows the process, the time period, so that we'll go through for the people that don't have social media, and they'll know, okay, they're just patching this fall to prepare for paving in the spring. We're going to try to do that in the neighborhoods that are affected so that people will be able to predict what we're doing and also know where we'll be working. A brand new thing that I'm unveiling tonight that I would like to say right up front was developed without any cost to the county Other than the man-hours spent developing it in the last week or so, Jimmy Threet and Brian Ritter with our GIS department developed a resident observed issues website. Ladies and gentlemen, you can go to fixingcountyroads.com right now as we speak, and it takes you to the resident observed issue, or ROI page on the county website. This page is interactive where you can access it on your mobile phone. You can take pictures of the situation you're seeing, whether it be a tree down, a bank that has collapsed, a pothole that has developed. If you take a picture of it with your phone and submit it through this portal, it will geolocate that and report it to our Roads and Bridges office. The things you see here are the live reports that we already got as a staff. The green ones are completed already, the yellow ones are in process, and the reds we're still looking into. You can follow these yourselves as you see what we do on those projects. It works just like social media. If you see something that's particularly a problem that's already been reported, you can like that report, and that'll also give us feedback on how we are doing. Again, that's fixingcountyroads.com. It's going to look like this. If you have trouble using it, in the next day or two, a video will go up to show you exactly how to use it so that you can report those road issues. We hope that you all will find this ROI page to be helpful. Another aspect of the ROI page that we're rolling out, gentlemen, is that it'll also have, as new projects are announced, as new projects are begun, as new projects are completed, they'll all show up on the ROI page. So we want you to all look at that. A couple updates on projects that are ongoing. That map shows you the projects that were done just in the last calendar year. But I want to let you know about some of the projects that will be coming up. North Old Mill Road, Rice's Creek Church Road, Jewel Merck Road, Bakerville Road, and City Lake Road are all going out to bid here this month for contracts to be awarded in November. We're also looking at replacing over 1,000 feet of guardrail. Total budget for this portion of the project is $1.32 million. Also update you on Aaron Lane. That should be replaced. That's a cross-line pipe that's got to be replaced here in the next couple of weeks. And the culvert is supposed to be in on Old Dacusville. A lot of people have asked about Old Dacusville Road. The culvert is being built by another vendor. That's supposed to be delivered, and we'll be installing that in November. So each month I'll try to update you here as well on the road projects that we have going on, but we're going to try to put out a lot of information to show people how their hard-earned tax dollars are being spent. If you come during the day to county admin, it's fire prevention month, and in our free room, which is just on the other side of this hallway, we have a fireman there doing fire training, teaching people about fire safety and also about the proper use of fire extinguishers. I took the test on the fire extinguishers today and failed. I did not know how to use a fire extinguisher properly, according to Chief McLean. So yeah, exactly, PASS. That's what he taught me today, Mr. Chairman. Pull, aim, sweep, sweep. So I learned that. But that's open to the public. It will be Monday, Wednesday, Fridays. There'll be office hours in the mornings and the afternoon. That's all available on our website. Gentlemen, that's all I've prepared to update you on. Thank you for the opportunity, and I appreciate you giving me a moment or two to give you a little more information based on the feedback from the public. If there are any other questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Roper? Mr. Whitehurst.
We had talked last month after the committee of the whole meeting, and I'd asked you to look into a way that we can take this millage that we've increased for roads and be able to tie it so that it can never be used on anything else but roads. Have you got some answers on that?
We don't have any answers about that tonight. It's something that we're still investigating. Obviously, you had expressed your desire to make this, I think you used the term lockbox. Let's put this money in and so it can never be used for anything different. We are researching that, and we'll get back with you all on that.
Okay, well, I have something by the next meeting.
Yeah,
what do we have to, I guess my question is, what do we have to do?
Well, we just got to get you something that we feel certain about. We want to give you good recommendations on that. So yes, you'll have it by next meeting.
Other questions from Mr. Roper?
That's right. That's right.
I have a question. For the comment and the question, I'm kind of facing the same thing. I've got 3 houses in my district where you've got grass kind of growing up to the roof line, you've got junk cars, you've got trash in the yard. And what I did was, when the complaints were filed, I started to document everything. I'd call in every month to the clerk and say, where are we? So there would be an officer went out, certain date. There was a warning given. They have 30 days to do it. If they don't, they have a court date that they have to go to. What I learned in 2 instances that have really kind of gone to the end, if they don't show up for court, the magistrate just dismisses the cases. So they should issue a bench warrant at that time and go get that person, but they're evidently not, right, in those 2 cases. So there's got to be a better solution to this, because we're going to have this comprehensive plan where we're going to upgrade all our laws, and most of them are civil laws. And if you write the citation and the person doesn't show up and the judge just dismisses it, it's a complete waste of time. I've been spending 5 months on it with these 3 houses, and I am no further now than I was 5 months ago. Either a bench warrant has to be issued, or maybe we could send the attorney there to actually prosecute the case if the guy doesn't show up, urge the judge to issue a bench warrant. Something more has to be done, because in my cases, and Wayne was, talking about one of them, it was a waste of 5 months. Really.
Mr. Sater, if you forgive me, I have a question. What?
Mr. Sater.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm done.
Mr. Chairman.
That's fine.
What recourse do we have? I mean, how can we solve this?
It's a fair question, and it is a frustration. I know, and I'm going to give one answer defending the magistrates here, and that is that they've received direction from the Chief Justice of the State Supreme Court on how to operate court during the pandemic, and there are rules that are different. But the other thing I would say to you, and just so that it's clear on this point, I stand before you as the chief executive of the county government, but I have no authority over any judicial officer. So the magistrates do not answer to me. They do not answer to this council. They answer to the delegation. They answer to the governor who appointed them. So that's just a point of clarification.
So can we put pressure on the delegation?
What has been done to address it with it? I know that we've had this issue that this nice lady has come since June and spoke to us about. And I know that that one's a little tricky, but I'm sure there are others that are a little tricky too. What have we done? What can we do? Would having an attorney show up to try to force the hand?
We've talked about that, and I'll let Mr. Hendricks address it.
What we've got going on is we have a problem from the way that the magistrates are prosecuting these cases, and they have direction from the Supreme Court, which directs the magistrates. Okay, so they're telling them they've tied their hands some way. Also, our cases have been prosecuted by the officers themselves, and so when the officers go over there and they don't have, when the magistrates are trying to push the cases out, and these officers are going in front of the magistrates day after day, some of the cases have been dismissed. One of the ways that we've addressed that, and starting with the place on at 1786, is that I personally have gotten involved. I've gone there, I filed motions with the magistrates court as the county's attorney, and made some progress on that. In that instance, we actually researched the property, found out that it was in an estate, and once we have additional officers, there'll probably be some more citations that are issued to the actual owner of the property, which is the estate. We also consolidated all of those cases, so the next available jury term, they will come up. After that, the solicitor's office actually took that case over and is prosecuting the case. So there's been movement and progress, but it's certainly been, in my opinion, it's stagnant and not moving quickly enough. And there's several different factors that have made that happen. And so hopefully going forward that you will see a lot more activity. I'm not advocating that we change our ordinance today to make it stricter or stronger. I think the ordinance is there. It's the process after the citations are issued and getting the people prosecuted for not doing what they should be doing.
Yeah, I think, and if I hear Mr. Madden correctly and Mr. Councilman Sater correctly, we can write all the tickets and where we want, but if they're going to be thrown right out, we're wasting fuel and paper.
That's exactly
right. In my 3 instances, there's no movement at all in 5 months. I mean, it's just, I'm contacting her on a regular basis. These guys are tired of hearing from me. But I wanted to see where the weak link was. The magistrate isn't issuing bench warrants. That's the problem. So they're just going to not show up to court. And
Well, and then the other issue is that if they try them in their absence, and they issue a warrant or they issue a fine. Say it's they try them, they issue a fine, it's $500. Then our means of collecting that is very cumbersome. So a judge does not want to issue an order that he can't enforce, and so what we're basically doing is issuing a fine. If you have a traffic ticket and they issue a fine against you, and they don't pay it, they take your driver's license away. However, if you have a junk car in your yard and you get a citation, you get a $500 fine, they don't have a car that you can take away because that's not part of the way the system works. So there's difficulties in enforcing it as well as problems.
Yeah, but there's also criminal aspects in the law too.
Those are criminal aspects.
But I mean, there's never any prosecution. I mean, our ordinance is civil and criminal.
Well, the ordinance that they're prosecuting on is civil and criminal. You're exactly right. But it's criminal, so the fine can be a criminal fine, but you can also put people in jail for that.
Right. Any other questions for the administrator? Hearing none, we'll move to item number 5 on tonight's agenda. That's the committee reports from September 20th. The committee of the whole met in the main conference room at the admin building. Log number 185 was consideration of request from Library Board for expansion plans for the Hampton Memorial Library. Council Henry Wilson made a motion for the library to move forward with the design and bring council a final confirmed budget of the expansion project. Motion was seconded by Vice Chairman Roy Costner, and the motion carried 3-2 with Councilman Trey Whitehurst and Councilman Seda opposed. No seconds required as this comes as a recommendation from the committee. Is there discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Seda.
Okay, I want to thoroughly explain why I'm going to vote no on this, because on Facebook you get a lot of misleading information. I want everybody to hear why. This is, there's a $2.6 million expansion at the Easley Library. I don't want to reduce anything that the library is doing. I don't want to cut its $3.4 million budgets. I don't want to cut any of its 57 employees, nor any of its total square footage at the 4 branches. But I don't want to see it grow unreasonably either, and this plan expands it unreasonably. Reading the state law, the county council has the ability to approve budgets at the library. So this decision to spend $2.6 million is actually our decision. It's in our lap. I'm not going to defer it to the library board. Unelected, unaccountable to the public board. This is a lot of money, so I'm going to make this decision. Second thing is the Easley Library now occupies 53,000 square feet. That's 2.5 times the size of the administration building, which is 20,000 square feet. They're going to expand that to 65,000 square feet. I think it's excessive, mainly because the visitors to all the branches of the library have been declining over a decade. 10 years ago, there was about 575,000 visitors going to the library branches. According to the audit, pre-COVID, it was 360,000 in 2019. 2020, it was 278,000. It's lower now, so that trend is downward. The bottom line is things are changing. When my daughter goes to read something, she doesn't go to the library and check out a book, she downloads things. I like a book. I like a big hunkin' building to go to, but I'm not going to be here much longer. I'm almost 60, right? So you got to look at the future. I think what we should be doing is spending the money on, instead of expanding the library branch in Easley, we should be expanding the money on streamlining and modernizing delivery of that service in the digital age in all the branches. And second, and the next point is I think we spent enough money on the Easley Library, about $10 million in total. When you look at the upper echelon of buildings in this county, it's the library and the 4 high schools. That's there. It's a beautiful building. I don't think we should spend any more money there. Surely we have capital needs at the branch in Liberty. We have capital needs in Pickens, in the library branch there, and also Central and Clemson. I'd spread a little of that money around. Roofs, HVACs, ADA compliant upgrades like a nice drive-through window, which I think is going to be the future of transferring books to digital. The other thing is, and I'm very much old school, the library under the law is an education agency. I think with this decision, we're moving away from that. We're going to make it more of a community center, more of a events planning center, and get away from its mission, which I think is education first and foremost. And finally, we have a two-tier financial system in this county, the way we fund departments. The library has its own savings account, it has its own millage rate, and as a result, it's always first on its own list. When you look at the other departments, they're all put into the general account. One millage rate is a $69 million list for needs, and they have to compete. Honestly, I think if this library plan to add 12,000 square feet for meeting space was actually competing against every other department, it would not be approved. That's really unfair to those departments. So for those 5 reasons, I'm actually voting no.
Thank you, Mr. Sada. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Wilson.
So I attended the very last library board meeting. I didn't quite get all the notes of what Mr. Sada said, but what I walked away thinking was there are a lot of projects across the library system that have been deferred, ADA compliance in Pickens. I mean, basically a complete update in Pickens. Air conditioning issues, roofing issues. They have some funding for some of those items, but just overall, the library system as a whole is not consistent across the county. The plan that they presented to us at the point they presented it didn't fundamentally account for the incredible risks right now in any kind of planning associated with construction processes and projects. The input back to them individually, and I think during the meeting, was that the plan that they presented didn't accurately reflect the incredible inflationary prices that we have on construction projects right now. So the last thing was, and something I've been asking for since the very beginning of discussions about library funding, particularly going into the budget cycle, is what's your vision? How does this feed into the vision? And the proposal they made didn't quite clarify where the library is going over a 10-year period. It seemed like we'd like to do a lot of good stuff, but there wasn't a clear line of sight from a vision perspective on what they want to do and how it materially benefits the community from a return on the investment that we're talking about. And it is a considerable amount of money. So to me, if you add those things up, no clear plan with a real tangible sort of impact statement of what they're trying to accomplish with it. Something Mr. Sada said, yeah, they're expanding a building that already has a ton of space. So no clear vision of how they could maybe stage this, mitigate the overall financial cost impact and the risks associated with inflation. So without all of those things kind of in place, to me, I thought that it was important. Clearly, I wanted to promote it to this point where we can have a discussion about it, but it's not a real plan and it's not risk mitigated. And when I witnessed the discussion at the library board, there was one person asking questions, and none of the questions were answered in the debate, about whether or not they'd move forward. It was more of well, we're going to move forward. And so what I would suggest is that since we do have a number of very qualified folks that have elected to volunteer for the library board, I'm not going to vote for it. It may pass, it may not pass, but I'm not going to vote for it under the hope that the new incarnation of the library board will be a little bit more proactive with respect to planning, long-term vision, communicating that vision, showing how it's going to benefit folks in the community, and developing a long-term construction plan that reflects the current realities of the cost increases that we're seeing from inflation. So ultimately, I can't vote for it because I don't think it's a good plan, and I don't think it benefits the community in a way that's tangible and easily understood.
Question, Counselor.
Mr. Wilson, I'm curious because maybe I misunderstood. I thought we were asking them to come back with a plan, and this was just giving them the ability to do that. I'm not in favor of voting for the plan as it exists now for all the reasons that you guys stated. I thought that's what the motion was about, so I may be wrong.
The motion is for those guys to come back with a plan, but starting from the spot that they're at now, and recognizing that there will be, up maybe $50,000 to $100,000 spent on this particular plan, I don't think it's a good foundation for starting off that plan. Now, clearly, not everybody was at the meeting, right? So there was an opportunity here for everybody to have part of this discussion. But ultimately, for me, and that's a transparency element there, Mr. Gibbs. We all have the opportunity to kind of talk about it now, and for me, the big piece is it's not a great foundation just to kick off this discussion, because we're going to spend some money to get to the next point. I think that from a leadership perspective, the new incarnation of the board should have an opportunity to get in there and contribute to it, ask some questions, do a deep dive, really reflect what would be value associated with what we're going to pay for. I don't think it sets them back in any way. All it really does is push them out further into the economic cycle where we might start seeing some abating of the pressures that are driving inflation. Maybe we don't, maybe we continue to see the spike that we're seeing, and it would be, unwise on our part to allocate a small amount of money towards a huge project like this with only 20% reserved. So to me, it's just not a well-founded point to start from.
Okay, I understand. I understand what you're saying now. I agree that my mom's a librarian, and I grew up with my afternoons in the library. So it has completely changed, and the number of people coming, Councilman Seda is correct, have gone down. I know 4 years ago when we began to have this discussion then, and it was a different board, different director at that time, but the whole conversation was around, y'all got to do something. And they at that time had no money in the reserves to be able to do this. So I am anxious to see a solid solution to how do we make better use of these facilities so that we serve the public in the world that we live in today.
Sure.
And that's and to y'all's point, maybe this doesn't necessarily do that. And to your point, pushing it back to them to work it even more makes sense.
Mr. Chairman, do you mind?
Mr. Wilson.
So had a discussion afterwards about how they got to this point. My takeaway was, if we're going to have a new board, they shouldn't have to walk in the door with something like this already decided. So let's give them the opportunity, the new folks on the board, the opportunity to contribute, to ask questions with a clear view. But one of the things they told me was that in times past, in my understanding, they would come to the board or come to this council every time they had a financial issue. So there wasn't really long-term vision and planning, et cetera. They just came to us with every emergency. And so that was the foundation for why they changed the way the board it was funded. And then the folks that have been on that board for a long time were basically explaining to me that once that happened, they started looking down the road at long-term, and they started being sort of parsimonious with regards to the spending and setting aside money for what they thought their long-term opportunities would be. I just see that this is a weak plan. And with a 20% reserve, they're going to be, my opinion would be, if we keep seeing the continuing in inflation, and if you look at the trend lines, it's up over a long period of time, they're going to be coming back to us to bail them out of a construction project that doesn't really reflect a strong vision to begin with. And I think we're going to be arguing next year about continuing their budget, at the incredible comparative percentage rate versus other areas. I think that's going to be a difficult time for them to come in and ask us for a bailout.
Other discussion?
I'd like to get a better idea of what we're going to vote on tonight.
So, and you
brought
up a great point. So at the last meeting, the library board the library director brought us a plan for finishing the second floor there at the Easley Library, the two wings that are currently unoccupied, increased meeting space, kind of swapping up some of the way the second floor functionality is now. I think there was some first floor renovations involved, and I will tell you that the presentation was a great presentation. Councilman Whitehurst and Councilman Wilson both made a point that the conceptuals that we were looking at really didn't match the budget, and the more I thought about that, the conceptuals were great. If you could have gotten the conceptuals for the money that they were talking, we would have had a deal and a half. So what we came out of the committee meeting with, what you have before you tonight, was the idea of allowing them to get a true budget, which would be taking it to the next engineering architectural level, if I'm not mistaken, which costs money to do that. But to allow them to use their funds to take it, to get us a good firm budget, because we were playing, it felt like in paper doll world at that moment, and that's not realistic. That's not where we're at. Councilman Wilson, I'll remember, he actually mentioned that he's having to buy certain materials in such large bulk in order to even get them. Forget the cost, just the physicality of being able to get that whatever material it is for construction, just because not only are the costs high, but the actual shortage of product is a major issue. And so that's what you're hearing is the conversation that the budget may not be realistic,
the project may not be realistic, purely because you may not be able to get the materials and supplies as well as other things. That's pretty much my summation of the long conversation that we had. And I have to agree with you, the more I've thought about it after that night, if you could get the conceptual for the budget presented, that would be awesome. But that's not realistic, and you're right, I'm afraid we'll be asked for a bailout at the end. Does that clarify?
Yes, sir.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Opposed? That was 606 against. Item number 2 on the log, number 177, which is the American Rescue Act funding. I made the motion to use American Rescue Act funding towards Blue Ridge Electric Pickens County Broadband Initiative and towards 20 solid waste containers for the solid waste department. The motion was seconded by Councilman Seda, and it carried 5-0. Does not require a second. Is there any discussion?
The only comment I want to add, Mr. Chairman, is just the cost of that. So the broadband is going to, investment's going to be $1.6 million, and the 20 blue bins is going to be $187,000. Is that right?
That's what I believe to be
Okay,
correct.
so just include that in the minutes, fills them out.
And that is money that we had allocated. The 1.6 was money we had already planned on anyway. We're just going to use the ARPA funds for it. All right, any other discussion? All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. 6-0, thank you. Log number 182, Unified Dispatch from staff. I made the motion to authorize the administrator to enter into negotiations with the City of Liberty for assuming dispatch responsibility for emergency services to continue to give updates to council and to include the updates in the administrator's report each month. The motion was seconded by Councilman Wilson and carried unanimously, 5-0. No seconds needed. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, how's that going?
We only had preliminary discussions so far because we're waiting for this vote.
Okay. And the preliminary discussions?
Have been positive.
Councilman Wilson.
The discussion that we had, the briefing that we had, was very heavy on the we won't commit to a date. And it was equally as heavy on a lack of transparency with regards to increases in costs. Which to me, when you aggregate a service like this, to make it more strategic and to make it more focused, generally speaking, you should see at least some form of reduced costs and greater efficiencies. The message that I kept hearing was we're going to hire a whole bunch more people. We don't know yet how many it's going to be, and we don't want to commit to a particular, maybe not necessarily a deadline, but a range of time that this kind of thing should take us to be able to do it in an efficient, effective, and well-managed way. So as a project manager, program manager over the years, that's every one of my red lights. You don't know how long it's going to take you, but you know you can do it, and you don't know how much it's going to cost you, but you know it's going to be a bunch. That's scary to me. So I'd like to see a little bit more fundamental plan, personally, than that. So I think that's what sort of the dialogue was. What's your first wicket to kind of test the idea, but overall, how long is it going to take you? And then and understanding that the target should be, there should be an efficiency associated with this that warrants bringing it all to one spot. I think we all have some fundamental and strategic considerations to bring it to one spot, but it sounded to me like a lot more money for for the same service.
Right, and I think that's right, the way you're stating that, Mr. Wilson, is that this preliminary step is to get our arms around what efficiencies can be gleaned from bringing in Liberty Central Pickens that operate on their own, so to speak. So what I need to do based on this vote is to make those preliminary negotiations that Liberty is open to the concept. That's where we are. Get it a lot more specific and bring it to you with a lot more specificity. So I think this vote is important in that regard. It will authorize me to enter into those negotiations and bring y'all back a more specific plan for phase 1 of this. And then that will tell us a great deal about time periods, costs for a future phase, if it's warranted.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, just have one comment. Right now, when somebody calls 911, they could be going to Easley, Central, Liberty, LEC?
That they could be going to Easley, Clemson University, Liberty, or to our dispatch at the LEC.
Okay. So the ultimate goal is to have, when you call 911, for it to just go to one place,
That's correct.
and then they dispatch services from there.
Right.
So that's the transition that we're trying to do here.
Right.
Okay, and Liberty is the first phase of that, to pull Liberty into the central location. Okay. Understand. All right.
Can we also get another clarification that the entire success mechanism here is going to be predicated on the idea that we can improve the communication system, the architecture, substructure that they're using, with this expense that we put in here as a priority with respect to the ARPA funding? That's a foundation piece of success.
Yeah, it seems these two are going to be closely related. The communications aspect from the ARPA discussion that's still ongoing, that y'all will continue to get updates from us on. And there's also the component of, can we demonstrate that a unified dispatch is more efficient, more cost-effective, and provide better service?
Okay.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. That's 6. Thank you, gentlemen. Log number 184, consideration of recommendation from Public Service Commission for provision of sewer for the Grange subdivision. No action was taken by the committee. Consideration of resolution 2021-21, accepting recommendation from the Public Service Commission to allow for the town of Central to provide sewer services to the Grange subdivision. And that resolution.
Yes, that was my question. We just vote on the resolution now, right?
That's correct.
Okay. What I had asked for from Central is here, that they are in agreement with doing this.
Yes, sir.
And that's,
Not only spoke with him, got the letter, and there was a prior letter as well. Let's get an updated letter.
Yeah.
So the resolution says exactly what we talked about at the committee on the whole.
yeah, and I did talk to them as well, so everything is good.
Thank you, sir.
So for point of clarification, that falls under motion and new business?
You need a motion for this resolution since there was no action taken. You can do it here.
Correct. Can I do it here is my question.
Yes.
So I ask for a motion for this resolution 2021-21.
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Wilson. Any discussion over the resolution 2021-21?
I have a point of clarification.
Yes, sir.
The administration confirm that we have multiple seats open this year for the board that governs this particular decision-making process?
The Public Service Commission, I know it has at least one vacancy. I don't have that information in front of me.
Okay. And we don't have any volunteers for that particular role in our packet? Okay. So where you put your poo is pretty important. So if any of you guys want to volunteer to have a real strong impact and input into where the community is going to take care of a very, very important element of just basic civilization, we sure appreciate you guys volunteering for it. Because we need a quorum and we need qualified folks to make these kinds of proposals and decisions for us on an ongoing basis. So if you stand at that podium over there and you have a strong feeling about it and volunteer, come and find out exactly how difficult these things are to do. We sure love to have you volunteer for it.
Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. And that's 6-0. Thank you, gentlemen. Item 6 on tonight's agenda is council correspondence. The committee of the whole meeting will be on Monday, October 18th at 6 o'clock in the main conference room here in the admin building. The next council meeting will be held on Monday, November 1st at 6:30 here in the council chambers. Are there any other correspondence to be announced? Hearing none, we'll move to item number 7, motion period new business. Does any member have any motions or new business at this time? Hearing none. Item number 8, Keep Pickens County Beautiful presentation. Mr. Roper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll recognize Allison Fowler with our Parks, Recreation, and Tourism Department to recognize our visitors and make a presentation.
Good evening. We have Mallory and Esther from Palmetto Pride to do a presentation for us.
Thank you so much, Allison and County Council members. I'm Mallory Coffey. I'm the Keep South Carolina Beautiful State Leader at Palmetto Pride, the state's anti-litter campaign. Esther here is our education manager. She tag teams with me whenever I'm in the upstate from Columbia. And we are here today to officially congratulate you all and the volunteer board members and staff members associated with Keep Pickens County Beautiful. On August 16th, something that takes some people more than a year to do, this affiliate completed their certification process to become an official affiliate of the Keep America Beautiful National Program. Through this, they received a $10,000 startup grant, and they are now eligible for other grant opportunities from Palmetto Pride and Keep South Carolina Beautiful. And I would like to brag a little bit. Where's Brooke? Come on, I'm going to put her on the spot. I know she doesn't like that. When you do this process, you have to submit a report that is anywhere from about 80 to 250 to 300 pages long. And if I steal anybody from here, it will be Brooke and Allison. Brooke did the best report that we have ever seen in South Carolina and in this nation. It is now used as an example nationwide of when you become an affiliate, this is what it needs to look like. She is absolutely incredible. She is going above and beyond to do things, and we appreciate the support from her, Allison, and you all to make this happen. And we look forward to seeing all the great things that y'all are going to do and currently doing and continue to do into the future. So we just want to present, come on, Brooke. I don't know. We want to present Brooke and Allison officially with their certificate from Keep America Beautiful for becoming Keep Pickens County Beautiful. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you again, gentlemen. Do you guys have any questions for us?
No, thank you so
All right,
very
we
much.
appreciate it. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you. Item 9 on tonight's agenda is consideration of resolution 2021-22, recognizing October as Breast Cancer Awareness Month. I ask for a motion and a second to consider resolution 2021-22.
Motion.
Motion by Councilman Fenster. Second by Councilman Wilson. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you, gentlemen. Item 10 on tonight's agenda is consideration of resolution 2021-23, declaring October 2021 First Responder Month in Pickens County. I ask for a motion and a second.
Motion.
Motion by Vice Chairman Costner. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Wilson. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Sater.
I think this is nice, but it's, of course, these resolutions are just symbolic. EMS is a top priority, and I think for this council, I've been talking about it for a while. One of the things I'd like to do is build a new EMS station. Usually, we haven't built one since 2012. We got an aging ambulance fleet. We actually had set aside some additional pay of $255,000 for areas that we felt we were to pay. $180,000 of that went to EMS. I guess I'm kind of surprised, because it's like the second time I've heard now that there's pay issues within EMS. I thought when we put that extra money aside and we targeted to EMS, that was going to take care of that. So, what this gentleman was talking about, is it a pay issue or some other issue? I don't know. Maybe Chairman Bowers can answer that, because he's in the business, or Mr. Roper. So that surprised me, because remember the whole purpose of that extra money was we were going to target something, and once we target, the original recommendation we got was really broad. We said, no, let's narrow it so that we take care of this and it's done. And EMS was one on the list. So did we just miss, or is there something else going on?
Well, I think that your question is a valid and a good point, and I agree with a lot of what you said. That the item at hand is the resolution, and the way I look at resolutions is it tells this county, it tells this administration, it tells the team here what's important to this council. So when we do these resolutions, I think that's what's so important about the resolutions, is it really shows that we're invested, and by proving that we're invested is by doing the things that you just talked about. And I think those are all budgetary issues we need to address. I think emergency services as a whole is something that we need to set some time. We need answers from Mr. Roper. Plain and simple, we need answers from Mr. Roper. But I don't think that this resolution is the place to get the answers from Mr. Roper. I think this is telling Mr. Roper and the rest of the team that we feel it's important. Fix it because we support it. I understand what you're saying, but I don't know that this is the appropriate time to address those issues.
One for clarification.
Mr. Wilson.
So can we get the county administrator to basically explain to us how he's been taking these resolutions and sort of putting them into action instead of it just being one more thing that we all talk about and pass?
Yes, and I appreciate that, Mr. Wilson, because Mr. Sada's point here and what the chairman's saying is valid. It can be an easy temptation for us to have 3 or 4 of these on every agenda, and then there's nothing associated with it. So one of the challenges I've given to my staff is to find ways to make that resolution mean something. For example, we've actually, because of scheduling, we've already done one thing related to Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Thursday, we had the mobile mammogram bus here, and we'll do those sorts of things throughout the month. When you all say that it's a month, then I consider that a moment to refocus. Last month was Mental Health Awareness Month, and you've seen on social media and in some of our reports some things that we've been doing. I reported tonight on having the SIM team and the Secretary of the VA here. So your point's well made. When council sets a policy out, I take that seriously, and I take that as direction for staff. So we try to specifically carry out things that you may pass in resolutions such as these.
Now, I will say, I would be prepared at the next committee of the whole meeting to have some hard discussions, because I feel like it's probably on the catalog in some way, shape, or form, fashion. And I think Mr. Seta brings some good points up. I think Mr. Page brought some good points up. I think we need a lot more answers to a lot of the questions out there. I've heard it mentioned in public forum. But for the purpose of this resolution, I don't know that it's the place to dive into those problems. Any other questions? Mr. Seta, is that acceptable?
Yeah, that's good.
Any other questions about resolution 2021-22? All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you, gentlemen. All right, where did I lost my place. 11, consideration of resolution 2021-24 to appoint certain county employees as county constables pursuant to section 49145 of the South Carolina Code of Laws. I ask for a motion and second to consider resolution 2021-24.
Motion.
I have a motion by Vice Chairman. Do I have a second? I have a second by Councilman Feimster. I know there's going to be a lot of discussion because this resolution is a little different than the other resolutions. So, Mr. Roper, would you like to brief us on this resolution?
Yes, and Mr. Chairman, what I would like to do is invite those folks scheduled to be considered by council for receiving their commissions to step forward. And I'd also like to ask their department heads, Mr. Brink and Ms. Fowler, if they would introduce to the council these individuals and what they will be doing for us, provided that council designates them appropriately.
Gentlemen, if y'all would kind of step up and line up so that we can identify you when you're called.
So from Parks, Recreation, and Tourism, we have Brooke Vanderpool and Stephen Bisu. These are both park rangers. They work primarily at Mile Creek Park. Brooke also works out of our museum and handles a lot of the litter stuff. And so they are our representatives to become county constables. We're very excited about this. It adds kind of a new level to their jobs to be more effective on county property.
Good evening, Council. I'd like to introduce 3 officers out of the Community Development Department. The first is Jordan Lee. He's one of your new litter officers that you guys have funded into this new budget. The second litter officer is Chad Chapman. And our final officer is Austin Castle. He is our code enforcement officer.
So the idea behind this resolution would be making these individuals constables to enforce county ordinances 2 of them on county property, and then the other 3 would be litter control and, I read it.
Code enforcement.
Code enforcement, thank you very much.
Right.
Any questions or discussion?
Can you just go over the authority and power given to each one of these individuals?
Sure. So
we
the
have clear
idea,
understanding?
and thank you, Mr. Whitehurst, the idea of commissioning these individuals is it gives them the authority under state law to enforce county ordinances. So, for example, our 2 park rangers here would then be able to enforce county ordinances at our county parks. They're limited by the resolutions to just jurisdiction in that area because we're not going to use them off of county property. For code enforcement, we will have a new code enforcement, someone who would enforce the county codes, things like that have been mentioned tonight, property conditions, junkyard regulations, those sorts of things. Those would be county codes. That's what that would be. That would be county-wide, so jurisdiction county-wide, not just on county parks. And then with the litter officers, as the ordinance exists now, and you'll see this is coming up on the agenda in just a moment, our ordinance is really geared towards solid waste. So initially, these gentlemen are going to be integrating a lot with the solid waste department. Their jurisdiction will be county-wide, but they'll be integrating with solid waste to try to keep up with things like out-of-folks dumping in our locations, people dumping things they shouldn't be, people dumping things on the side of the road that should be dumped at the recycling centers. So they're going to be focused mainly on those sorts of litter aspects. There will also be an education component to their job where they're going to be educating people about our litter laws. But so county-wide jurisdiction for the litter officers and for the code enforcement, county property jurisdictions for our 2 park rangers.
So they'll have the authority to write citations and tickets?
Yes, sir. They'll be able to write tickets. Now, for us to take the next step for them to be able to enforce state laws, that'll be another step. So this is just getting them certified for county purposes.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Sager.
We voted for these litter control officers because we really don't have specific litter control officers in this county. Will they be law enforcement officers? If so, what class will they be?
They will not be, there will be law enforcement officers in the sense that they'll be able to enforce county ordinances.
So will they be a class 3?
They will not be, based on this action, a class 3 officer. That's the certification they'll have to go through the South Carolina Academy.
Is that a plan?
It will be the plan.
So will they be a class 3 advanced?
Ultimately, that'll be a determination that I think we'll make in conjunction and working with the sheriff on training and what they are authorized to do and what they're not authorized to do.
So at some point, are they going to be able to carry a gun, have a badge, and wear a uniform?
Not as currently imagined.
Okay,
They
so
can wear a uniform, yes, but
law enforcement uniform. Okay,
Right.
so when a car's going down the street and somebody throws trash out the window, could these guys pull them over?
they could not as it currently exists.
A truck is going down the street, it doesn't have a tarp, stuff is blowing out the back, could they pull them over?
They could not as it currently is established.
Okay, they can't make arrests for litter crimes.
That's right. They can issue citations.
They can't enforce state law under 1611-700.
Not as of yet, no.
Okay,
That will be a goal.
Is that the goal?
That will be a goal.
Because what you're going to basically get is a civil code officer that's going to hand out citations. They're going to go to court. They're not going to show up, and the courts are going to dismiss it. It's the same thing. You have to add a criminal aspect. You got to give them criminal authority. They got to look like him. When there's somebody breaking the law, well, we're going to go through the same thing all over again.
And so what I would say with that, Mr. Seda, is you are absolutely right, but this first step has to happen for us to get there.
So my question is, I think it's borrowing something from Henry, what is it going to look like and when are we going to get there? Because that's what we paid for.
Right.
Okay, that's what I paid for.
So absolutely, absolutely.
Or I voted for, I didn't pay for it.
That's right.
You know, I mean, that's it, because, so what is the plan? Are they going to be, because they should be at least class 3 advanced, where they can carry a gun and they can make arrests under criminal law. Are we going to get to that point?
Mr. Sater, there was a, excuse me.
No, that's fine.
But I looked in this briefly, and the state divided that class 3 officers into A and B.
Basic and
Obviously,
advanced.
You know about A and B. And the advanced, or A, can carry guns. That's a recent development as of this year. So it's my understanding, and I spoke briefly with Mr. Brink about this, is that they will at some point get there, but we first have to commission them as officers here, and then they go to the state to be trained to be able to do that.
That was actually
That answers your question.
going to be my next question is, do they have to be commissioned in order to go for training in general?
This resolution needs to be passed in order for them to go to the state and do that. That's correct.
But there is a plan to do that.
That's my understanding.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the plan is that they're going to be advanced Class 3 officers?
That's correct.
Okay, and what is the time frame on that?
We put in their job description that they applied for at least a year. They've got a year to get that certification and go through the academy, which is typical for law enforcement officers.
So that, to exactly to that point, the importance of tonight's action is this gives them something they can do in the meantime.
Okay, so once they reach that certification, we're going to allow them to do the things that I talked about?
What's that?
That would be up to this council, right?
I mean, are we going to, are we going to allow them to pull somebody over?
Until they're certified,
Once they are we going to allow them to do that? Is that the plan?
They will, if they carry a gun, then they have the ability to arrest. That's the difference. So the answer, I guess, is yes. I haven't thought about whether they can pull somebody over.
There again, that would be up to this council to make those policies, correct?
That's correct.
Is that what our plan is? Because that's what I thought I was voting for, right? A real law enforcement officer that's going to get out there and issue tickets, and somebody's dumping illegally, criminal, enforce it. That's what I thought the plan was. Is that where we're going?
This is the first step in that direction.
Okay, so I need to know.
Any other discussion?
I think I agree with him. I wouldn't want them to be hall monitors. I'd like to see them be able to present an official law enforcement presence with regards to these types of issues. So I think that a year sounds great to me. Hey, Gary, you're going to share with them your training plan and whatnot so they can look like you?
They get it done in 4.5 months.
All right.
Now, Mr. Sater was talking about somebody going down the street in a truck and his tarp blows off and things blow out. Why couldn't your officer get the tag number and report it to whoever could possibly do something about it?
You know, starting after this commissioning, that's exactly what they will do. They could also follow them to the recycling station and interact with them there.
Yeah.
It's the first step in this sort of procedure.
So between now and then, the criminal law enforcement would be done by the sheriff's office?
We would have to rely on the sheriff's office to a great deal in the interim.
Okay.
Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. That's 6. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank y'all. Item number 12 on tonight's agenda. First reading and title only of ordinance amending the Pickens County Code of Ordinances related to litter and/or other property conditions. Ask for a motion and a second to constitute first reading and title only of this ordinance.
Motion.
Motion by Councilman Feimster. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Wilson. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I just have one question.
Yes, sir, Mr. Sato.
What we have is blank right now. Is there a draft of this anywhere that we can get tomorrow?
You actually received this in a packet. You remember the binder from Mr. Brink? This was some suggested language about all of our codes, but it include also some litter information in it as well that would be a starting place for this discussion. It's not included in this first reading and title only, but that's some background information for you to review so you all could determine how you want your litter ordinance to look.
Oh, I got you.
This is a cleanup, if you will, where we tasked Mr. Roper to get with Mr. Brink and to get with the sheriff and to sit down and look at our current ordinances and see what needed to be done to make them, whether it be giving them teeth or whether it be taking language out that made no sense, to actually make them enforceable. This is kind of one of the first ones. I think there may be another that we've already started, but it's just fixing or critiquing ordinances in place to make them better ordinances.
This is in committee, right?
Is this in committee?
It would be appropriate if it's not for you to make this motion for first reading and referral.
Can I amend to send this to committee?
I'll second that. Any discussion on the amendment to send it to committee following first reading? Hearing none, all in favor of the amendment? Thank you. Now, back to first reading and title only. Any other discussion? Hearing none, I ask for all those in favor as amended, please signify by raising your hand. 6-0. Thank you, gentlemen. Item 13 on tonight's agenda is second reading of ordinance number 604 to the Code of the County of Pickens to certify a portion of the Alice Manufacturing Company, Inc. aerial mill property as a textile mill site under the South Carolina Textile Community Revitalization Act. I ask for a motion and a second to constitute second reading of ordinance number 604.
Motion.
I have a motion by Councilman Feimster. Do I have a second?
I'll give it a second.
Second by Vice Chairman Costner. Discussion.
If you don't mind.
Sir?
If you don't mind.
Councilman Wilson.
My understanding from reviewing this previously is that this is properties that aren't the actual textile mill as a whole that's been in such distress and growing distress. I think this is just undeveloped land right there in the immediate area that was part of the mill hill. That's my understanding of it. Is that something that can be confirmed? Because when I looked at the layouts, it didn't look like it included any of the buildings or whatnot. So we're approving some form of monetization of support for development of that property in that neighborhood, but not necessarily the properties that are the most distressed. Is that what we're doing?
If I understand you correctly, that's correct. It is part of the property that was known as the Alice. Let's see, the Alice Mill property, a textile mill site. This is a requirement for whomever to receive state tax credits by us certifying that it meets the criteria. If you'll notice that it pretty much lays out what the definitions of are, etc. And all we're doing is saying that they turn, pretty much the way I understand this is that they meet the qualifications by the definitions of the state law, which it really makes no sense to me why we're the ones that has to do this, but and that we believe that it meets the criteria under the state statute. Is that? I mean, that's pretty much what I'm understanding.
That's correct. And some counties do it by resolution rather than by ordinance. We're doing it by ordinance, so the council has time to see what it is.
Yeah.
Because in the past, it may have been presented without council knowing what property we're talking about. This has actually gone through the planning commission. Both developments have been approved prior to you certifying it as a former textile site.
But I do believe, and I believe we discussed this in first reading, with the fact that it's not the mill as much as it is the property.
Yeah, and it's an actually income tax credit rather than a property tax credit.
Correct.
So we're giving them an income tax credit on the state level to develop a piece of property that is supposedly a dilapidated mill to be rejuvenated into space that's no rejuvenation required. I thought the idea of this was to try to take these structures that are dilapidated and people to invest in those structures to make them into something. It seems like we're giving a credit to someone that's not doing anything but building buildings on empty land. Well, it's kind of what it looks like.
It's the Textile Communities Revitalization Act. So I think the act actually expands a little further than the physical mill structures.
Yeah, in some places they actually tear down old houses that are really gone in bad
there's
shape.
There's nothing here, right?
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, that's vacant land. It's kind of like the opportunity zones. You know, that's a state thing, that if you look at where those are, it's mostly vacant land.
So for clarification, we're just saying, yeah, this is a textile.
Pretty much, yes, sir.
Location.
That is the way I understand this. Any other discussion?
I just want to add one thing. Yeah, that's all right. We talked about it at the meeting. The way you read the law, if it's within 1,000 feet vacant land, it applies. If it was a property tax credit, I would never do it. We said it.
Right. It's a state.
It's a state credit. That's the way the state legislature wrote the law. That's what they're okay with. I'm okay with it, but believe me, it's not within the spirit of the law. I agree.
It's not the spirit of the law.
No, I mean, they really want you to, you have some eyesore textile mill there. It's been sitting there for years, and you're going to get this income tax credit. They have a piece of land. They probably used it at some point. Who knows? They may have to do some studies on the soil or something. Who knows? Maybe they dump some things there. But there's no structures on it now. So I understand what you're saying. I'd rewrite the law if I was in the legislature.
I'd like to have the guys come in and explain how they justify income tax credit on something they ain't. I mean, they're just building property on here. I mean, building houses, is that what it is?
I believe it's a 20, I looked into it, a 22 lot single family residences is one of the uses, and then the other use is a townhouse development, 20 unit townhouse development. So yeah, both of them are residential. I can contact the builders and let them know. There's a long history with the legislature back and forth about what properties were actually allowed this credit and whether or not it had to be the structure itself or not. That actually went back and forth in the legislature in the early 2000s. I wasn't involved in history, but I can have those guys come in and talk to you.
Again, I don't really understand why it's county council's place to certify something to meet a state law requirement. That just really makes no sense. Of all the things they give us authority over, that's not one that I understand. But for the spirit of it, this is second reading. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Opposed? 5-1. Thank you, gentlemen. Item 14 on tonight's agenda is third reading of ordinance number 603 to amend the animal control ordinance. Do I have a motion and a second to constitute third reading of ordinance 603?
Motion.
Motion by Vice Chairman Costner. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Feimster. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Sater.
I just want to add one thing that I think the council, and particularly the previous council, has been very generous when it comes to animals in this county. And I want to just highlight a few things that you've done, because sometimes they're forgotten. In the last few years, and I look at budgets very closely, when you look at operation spending, animals, really, spending growth are in the top tier, the top probably 10%, 15% of spending growth. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but over 5 years, I think spending on growth on animals went from about $470,000 a year to $800,000 now. On top of that, the county council, I think in about 2017, built a county shelter, but that was $135,000 on top of that. Clemson Poor Partners requested help with the spay and neuter program, and the county was there. I think you guys did that maybe last year or the year before. The county leases them the building for public record for $10. County pays the electric, the water, the building insurance, plus the general maintenance on the building and groundskeeping. And they're doing spay and neuter there now, at a reduced price because of that. The council in 2017 wrote this ordinance, and then we were asked again to look at it again, and we did, and we're making some changes here. One is to add a definition of a vicious animal, which was missing in the ordinance. One that attacks a human or a domestic animal. That was requested, and we added that. That lines up with the state law. We struck out the part where a hunter determines whether his animal's vicious or not. We were kind of curious about that one. And then we also added language to support the cat trap and neuter program, which is these feral cats, they're out and about. What they do is somebody grabs it, gets a voucher from the county government, they get them neutered, they put them back out there. We've invested $22,000 in that program. So, I mean, I'm very impressed. I had almost nothing to do with it because I just joined the council. They've done a lot for the animals in this county, and I just wanted to review it because sometimes some people forget that.
Thank you, Mr. Sater. And I do want to thank you. You've helped. You've been very diligent with the communication and verbiage of this, and I do appreciate that. Any discussion or questions? I have noted that everything we've asked for to be changed, even up to the changing one or more from the second reading to third, it's all in there as we've discussed. Does anyone see anything else or have any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. And that's 6. Thank you, gentlemen. Item 15 is the consent agenda. I don't believe I have anything to put on the consent agenda tonight. So item 16 takes us to executive session. Under South Carolina law, section 30-4-70, executive session for economic development, both Project Farmhouse and Project Nod, and then boards and commissions, an update from the Pickens Water Authority. Do I have a motion and a second? Do we go into executive session for these items and these items alone?
Motion.
Motion by Councilman Wilson. Do I have a second? By Councilman Feimster. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you, gentlemen. This time we'll go into executive session after a very short recess.